Okay, welcome to the 28th edition of the Weekly
Eighth,
Update.
eighth.
Eighth? Yeah, it's not. This is where I lose. It's for those of you who've only heard me in English, my diction is not that clear in Hebrew as well. Just FYI, it's not just an English problem. TH, not a friend of mine.
Luckily, Hebrew doesn't have a lot of that.
Yeah, but it has other stuff that I find difficult to pronunciate. So how you doing, my friend?
What's up?
I'm good.
How are you? It's been a while. I miss Wingley. I
Yeah.
missed it. I think we skipped one.
We skipped one, and also I think last one you weren't there. I think if I remember correctly.
Right. I was in Belgium. I think.
Oh, right. Oh, you did the config management, right?
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about that, Elad. Do you remember?
It was awesome. Yeah, it was. Do you remember?
No, I don't know why. At this moment, okay.
It was really fun. I actually really enjoyed it. It was kind of like getting to know a new community of like amazingly geeky engineers, which I love. And it was really, I felt with my people kind of.
Yeah.
Like people are geeking out about, very, very DevOpsy sysadmin crowd, but awesome people. And it was really fun to.
Yeah, I remember when you came back, you had that. I was with my people vibe. It was you felt home there in a second, right? I mean, it's
not in a second, but I feel like definitely, very welcoming, and it was really fun to talk about Wing. It was really fun to talk to hear Adam Jacob talk about Wing in his keynote. I was like sitting there, and I was like, I don't know if people didn't catch that. It's actually a really great talk, and he talked about 3 cool and new things. And he talked about OpenAI, System Initiative, and Wing.
Wow.
Awesome. And so I was like, whoa, this is super cool. Awesome. And so I spent some time with these guys. And anyway, yeah, it was fun.
Yeah. Awesome. And we have Marcio. Hey, Marcio, how you doing, my friend? Saying hello. Today we have 2 sections in our show. We have an interview with Allen Helton. We're gonna talk. Have you ever met him, Allen?
Physically?
Yeah, physically.
I don't think so. It's hard to tell nowadays.
Yeah.
I feel like.
Yeah, with all the reinvents, maybe it's hard to tell, right?
But great, awesome guy, and I feel like it's going to be super interesting. I'm super interested about this conversation.
Awesome. Yeah. So Allen,
and then the changelog.
Oh, of course, and then
which I missed. I really missed.
You missed the changelog.
So I'm really hoping Mark is going to do cover the entire time that we haven't done the changelog.
So changelog, so we haven't done this a month ago, right? It's been a month because the month before we had
everything that happened in a month.
Yeah, well, let's see what it brings us. Yeah, awesome.
So yeah.
Yep. So let's invite Allen here.
Hey guys, how are you?
Hey, what's up?
TV started playing in front of my face. How you doing, Allen?
I am good. And set the record straight, we have not met in person. Only online. Yes.
It's you hear. I mean, you look at. I mean, in our industry, I see the same. I see the same faces a lot of time, and so you don't really know whether you've met the people or not. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And
I think Allen is a little bit more professional at this than us. So.
Yes.
That's not true. Not true at all.
No, when I was looking at Allen, I said, "Oh yeah, Allen. Okay, of course. I've seen this a lot of time, and I've replayed your go-to. I've looked at your go-to talk from 23, and I said, okay, and it was super interesting, and I really enjoyed kind of prepping for this because I really like that talk.
Thank you. That was a fun one. I really enjoyed it. That was a good conference. That's the first time I've ever been to Nashville, which I'm from Texas. I'm from the Dallas area, and I generally associate myself as a cowboy, and not American football, like actual like
with the cow.
with
the cow.
Yes. And so when I went to Nashville, I was all ready to see the fake cowboys, the ones that from Texas. So it was a good time. I definitely saw a lot of them. I'm just gonna come out just guns hot apparently and offend people right off the bat.
So do you go to a lot of conferences?
According to my wife, yes. I go to, I don't know, probably like 8 a year, something like that.
80?
8.
Eight.
Okay.
Eight. Yeah.
Okay.
He's
I mean,
he's not Eric Johnson.
that's a lot to
He's
some
not Eric
people.
Johnson.
Yeah. No. I actually interviewed on for Eric's team at one point in time, and he said it was like 25% travel at most. And I was like, no, it's not. I know you. I know who you are. No, it's not.
But but I think like he loves it. I mean, definitely, it's definitely his thing. So which conferences do you like? What's your favorite conference?
Favorite? I mean, it's gonna be reInvent. That one is. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like the platinum bar. Really, it's the scale of it, the amount of knowledge transfer that you get, the parties, the fact that you can see everybody that you talk to globally in the same place, like see them all in person, and you can just pretty much assume that anyone you talk to online is going to be there. It's like that upper echelon conference for me. It's like that's the one. If I had to only pick one, it would be that one, hands down, every time. But yeah, I talk at other ones like Postman is another. It's another company that I really like a lot. So I generally try to go to that one every year and just talk about APIs in general over there. Yeah, hit or miss on the other.
I think this year we'll have to go to reInvent. Last year we skipped it actually.
Yeah,
but
it was a good time. It always is. It's a rush. It's a rush.
It's too intense.
The rush is intensive. You have to be. Intense.
Oh my gosh! Every year at reInvent, it's usually on Wednesday that I start saying I'm ready to go home. It's just so much.
After walking like 3,000 miles and
yeah.
No, yes, yeah. Staying out until 3 or 4 in the morning, getting up at 7, doing it all over again.
Yeah.
You learn so much.
Yeah. No, it is amazing. It's pretty amazing. But again, like as a contrast, like these like smaller conferences that like the one that the config management camp one, it's such a different experience, but and also really fun, right? Like I feel like it's a very different, non-commercial, small community, right? Like there's definitely like it's a different experience, but really enjoyed too.
Agreed. And what I like about the smaller conferences is that they're very niche. Like reInvent is about as wide of a net as it gets. You assume that if somebody goes there, that they're into software, and you can't really narrow it down for your assumptions at all. Software and AWS. But these other conferences are like super focused, like the talk that you were mentioning before that I did at Go to EDA Day. Everybody there was into event-driven architectures. Majority of them as well were into serverless. So it's like everybody there is like, I know exactly what we're going to talk about. I'm really excited about that.
Yep. I love the term architectureless over there. In that talk, Do you mind kind of talking a little bit about that?
Sure. So that talk specifically, I was talking about. Oh gosh, that one was.
I can help you.
Yeah, just give me the title or something.
You had WebSockets and gRPC.
Okay, real-time notifications.
Yeah, exactly, the real-time notification.
Yeah, so I prefer to use the term real-time notifications over something like WebSockets because people often use those two things interchangeably. And it's one of those things where you can describe, all squares are rectangles, but not all rectangles are squares. It's a subset. WebSockets are a subset of real-time notifications. But a lot of people, myself included, for years and years, thought that they were one and the same. I thought if I needed to get information from a server down to a client, I had two options. I had polling behavior, where I just make constant requests every, 10 seconds or 30 seconds from the client to the server, or I use WebSocket. And that was the word that I used every time, because that was what I thought. And, I work at a company where we have a notification service, a managed notification service, and it does not use WebSockets. And so that kind of opened my eyes. It's like, oh, real-time notifications, there's so many different protocols, and there's so many different trade-offs that you can make based on your specific use case.
Right. I was surprised to see that in your talk, when you talk about your the Moment solution, it's a gRPC solution. Actually, I didn't know that browsers knows how to basically can open a gRPC connection. I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, there's a very light package that you can use given the whatever programming language called gRPC Web that enables those connections to be made.
Got it. Makes sense.
Yeah. So one of the things that I like about using the Momento clients is that the gRPC stuff, you just have no idea at all. Right. That's what you're doing. Okay. It's abstracted away, which I know you guys are very familiar with, abstracting harder concepts away into meaningful API calls or semantically intuitive calls. So for us, it's just, topics, which is the name of the service, .subscribe, and that's like literally it, which is super cool. Or publish.
The one thing that kind of strikes me that is interesting is that when I'm thinking about it's actually we have a WebSocket library, but it's not a pub sub library. I mean, we don't. I'm thinking about maybe we need to abstract the client also, right? I mean,
go ahead.
If I'm not sharing whether this is if I'm not sure whether this is WebSocket or using gRPC, why should I share this with my customer? Why is that? Why does that? I mean,
I think WebSocket as a building block is useful.
Yeah, of course
it's not
it's
an
useful.
Abstraction.
It's not useful,
but I think there's value to defining an abstraction, right? And then maybe implementing it using WebSocket.
Yeah, exactly. Or gRPC or whatever. This could be a provider, a provider decision in the Wing use case where you can change providers. I mean, you can do an API gateway with API gateway in Lambda, or you can do this with load balancers and Fargates. It's not the developer concern. It's the platform provider concern. Yeah. But that's interesting. Sorry for this distraction.
No,
that's note to self.
Yeah.
Note to self.
Yeah. It's but that's an interesting concept. Awesome.
So
yeah.
Tell us a little bit about yourself. Like how did you get here?
How did you become a programmer?
How did you become Allen?
Yeah.
Well, the funny thing is, I didn't start programming until I was in college. I remember I was sitting at a orientation at the school I ended up going to, sitting right next to my dad, and we were looking at the majors, and I was like, Dad, which one of these makes the most money? And I didn't want to do medical. He knew I wasn't any good at medicals. We were in the engineering department, and he's like, computer science. And I was like, okay, I'll do that. The school that I went to specifically had a software engineering major, which is not one that I saw anywhere else in Texas. I went and toured all the major schools in Texas, and no one has software engineering besides where I went, which was University of Texas at Dallas. So I started that because I knew it was I assumed it was going to make a lot of money. I had written a couple of
such an American story.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it 100% that yes, it is. I had written programs without realizing that I had on like my TI-83 calculator when I was in school and in elementary and middle school. I didn't realize that's what I was doing at the time. It wasn't until I was in college that I realized that's what I was actually doing, which is funny. But I graduated college and I started at a company called Tyler Technologies, and I was there for 11 years. And I did almost every type of programming role or programming oriented role on an engineering side that you can do. Like I was a software developer, I was a tech lead, I did software engineering management for a couple of years, and then I did enterprise architecture for a couple of years as well. And during the time where I was a tech lead, going into being a manager, going into enterprise architecture, that was kind of where I started getting the cloud experience. They had, when I was promoted from tech lead to engineering manager, they said, build a team, pick your team, and go figure out the cloud. Go figure out the cloud for us.
Interesting.
That was like literally my task. That was all that I was given.
Nice.
Go figure out the cloud.
When
So,
was
you
it?
know,
What year was it?
what year was it?
Yeah,
Like 2018.
2018. Figure out the
Yeah.
cloud. The cloud.
Yeah. So
You didn't know about the cloud before?
they chose me because I was the most vocal about the cloud in general.
Okay.
I had never really done any cloud development. Everything that I had done professionally was like uh, enterprise desktop app development that's hosted on-prem. .NET, SQL Server Management Studio was always open on my machine. You know, single tenant stuff. So they wanted stuff that, you know, could be SaaS. So go figure out cloud SaaS, figure out multi-tenancy, figure out NoSQL. I had an immersion with some guys from AWS because they were a AWS partner, and they really pushed serverless in that immersion. And that was something that I latched onto very, very quickly and said, "Yep, that's what we're doing. This is what we're going to be doing." So over the course of, I don't know, it's like 4 years, we just researched and built a couple of production apps, which was really fun. But while I was learning and all that, we had a really bad culture of doing everything word of mouth. I couldn't find anything written down. And I personally was going on basically an exploratory mission and figuring out all the stuff. So even if I wanted to ask somebody that I knew personally, I couldn't because it was all on me to figure out. And looking online is really before this explosive content boom that we're living in right now. I couldn't find anything. So I started doing it. I started figuring out, you know, what
You started the boom.
I'm not going to claim that I started the boom, but I was, I was definitely early on in the boom, and I started writing and you know, published a lot of stuff on my personal blog. Actually, I started on Medium, and then, you know, read some stuff where you don't really own your content on Medium, so it's like, okay, well, I'll write it on my own blog then, and then I started, you know, learning and expanding out. You know, it's like, what kind of capabilities can I add to my website that can manage things for me? Started building those things, you know, learning, building, and then writing about them, and just continued kind of doing a self-documented journey while also documenting the stuff that I was learning about enterprise app development in this foray. And then that was when AWS named me an AWS hero, a serverless hero. And at that point, I got super excited about it. Started scaling it out more. Like I was continued to blog, but I also started a newsletter as well. I did that for about a year. It's still going actually. And then I started a podcast on top of that to talk about people, like talk with you guys about people, talk about people like you guys about interesting things in the cloud, and, you know, continued to scale up everything. So once I really got things going, like I had done the newsletter for probably, I don't know, 6, 7 months. I had been blogging for like 3, 4 years. I started realizing it's like, I think I like creating content enough to do that as a job. And so it's like, I took a serious leap of faith, honestly, leaving a job that I was at for 11 years. I was sitting in an architect role, and I was like, yep, I'm going to do it. I'm going to go and do content creation for a tech company full time. And that was when.
So you invented you invented the role. You called it ecosystem engineer.
I mean, yeah, I will not claim that I made that role, but the CEO of Memento made that role. Yes.
Yeah.
You know, it's essentially I just do developer advocacy here now. So I lean on the experience that I've built up over the past decade or so to come up with cool demos, build them, and then go around the world and talk about them, which is so much fun. So much fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome story.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I really, really appreciate the self-documenting journey idea. I feel like that's it requires a lot of discipline and a lot of you know, like it's not easy to write. I feel like I'm struggling to like figure out how to get into writing more, and like feel like I have too many opinions.
That could be a good thing. That could be a good thing.
Yeah, it's just I feel like again. So maybe I'll ping you later and give me some tips.
Yeah, I'm all over that. The first couple of times I started posting things that were more or less controversial or just not necessarily fits the mold of everything else that's out there. I would write the content, and then I would tell my wife before I published it, it's like, I'm gonna see my status in the community today. I'm gonna see if I'm gonna get hazed for what I'm about to say, or if I'm gonna get praised for forward thinking. And it's always fun. It makes me nervous every time I do it. But it's good to get different opinions out there, especially strong opinions.
Yeah. Okay.
Do you have any current kind of controversy you feel like you have right now in the state when you have controversy ideas, people consider them controversial at this moment in time?
Interesting.
There are several things that people generally associate me with that are more or less controversial. Like it is actually a good topic to bring up with you guys. Well, maybe not. I generally don't like the CDK.
Oh, nice.
Tell
us more.
Well, honestly, it's because I prefer when we're talking about infrastructure, I prefer to create it declaratively. I want to say I want this and this and this and this. I don't want to leave that up to code, because since I've been a programmer for 12, 13 years, I know programmers make mistakes. I do it all the time. And I don't want to accidentally make a mistake when I'm writing infrastructure code to spin up the wrong thing or whatever. Now, I'm saying all these things as things that could possibly go wrong. I know there's a lot of guardrails that the CDK has. I'm not super familiar with them because I just stay with SAM, the serverless application model from AWS, and just use that, which is essentially shorthand CloudFormation.
Yep. But why do you think like developers don't make mistakes with declarative models?
They definitely do. In my opinion, though, it's easier to see. It's easier to see.
Why?
I just feel like it's all matter of fact there. It's like, to me, it's like looking at a receipt. Here's everything line by line that's there, that's present. And I can look at it and I can see, okay, yeah, this is exactly right or exactly not right. If, looking at it another way, where it's code driven, it's not necessarily like that, because I could have something in a loop. I could have something abstracted away in a high level construct. It's not right there on the surface for me.
Interesting. It's, I've talked with a lot of DevOps engineer, and I talked to them about the differences between the two, and it's interesting because I think when I think about DevOps people, I mean DevOps engineers, and those of them who kind of favors the kind of declarative approach, I think that sums up their thinking pretty good. I think that's an interesting point of view. What do you think about this, Elad? What's
about what?
I'm asking Elad what he thinks about this.
I'm
not hearing it. Think about what?
I'm asking Elad what he thinks about the declarative.
If I wrote a piece of code that was basically like new lambda, new queue, new topic, new, right? Like it was like basically every line was like new lambda and there's a bunch of properties, new topic and a bunch of properties, new queue and a bunch of properties, and that's it.
Yeah, but okay,
right? But technically that was equivalent, right? Like from a.
But if you have for loops.
Wait, before the for loops,
yeah,
I'm trying to build the argument.
Yeah,
if I just wrote some code that has like a list of resources, right, and then for each resource, all the properties of the resource, flat, single, no structure, right, like basically just a list, then it would technically be equivalent to a declarative model, right?
It's another layer of abstraction.
No, it's basically a different syntax.
No,
it's the same exact content.
But do you have abstraction?
No,
okay.
No abstractions.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm with you so far. I'm with you, and I agree. Yes.
Okay, agreed. Right. And so I think what I'm trying to say is that the programming language based imperative model is a superset, right, of a declarative. You can use it declaratively if you feel that for your engineering culture, team, whatever, right, like requirements, then you want to use the model declaratively. Then you can technically write code that is declarative in nature, right? Like I feel like this point about, you know what I'm trying to say? So it's not that, I don't think that you're talking about the abstraction, because if you're using SAM, you're using abstractions, right? Like you're using.
Yep.
So it's not about the abstraction. It's about like the syntax of how you define the abstraction, define the declarative. I see Mark is. No, I'm curious to hear.
I'm sorry, I missed the question. If you asked me a question.
Yeah.
No. You did you ask a question?
No, I mean my question was that my point was that I think that when a declarative model is a subset of an imperative model, and I think the power of using an imperative primitives to describe something, right? Like when you're doing for I equals 0, 1 to 0, 1, 0 to 10, new bucket, then you're describing 10 buckets. The fact that you've used this for loop doesn't make it less like harder to understand if you're doing the right thing, right? Like if you're seeing the code, and I think the contrary, right? Like it actually expresses your intent more precisely, right? Like that's where CDK comes from. It's to be able to express the intent of the desired state. If you want to, you don't have to. You can completely express like just the details. You can do new bucket 1, new bucket 2, new bucket 3, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So that's how I see it, right? Like I feel like it's just a superior model. The fact that you can abuse it. You can also abuse JSON files and YAML files, and we've all done that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's easier to abuse something as powerful as a language.
Maybe
it's easier to abuse. I mean, I have abused Java and the abstract system in ways that come on, it's you can abuse it.
But it's an age-old conversation.
No,
yeah.
Some people like this. Some people, this is more suitable for them. Some organizations, this is more suitable for them. This is what it is.
Yeah.
It's
that we talked about adding support for defining Wing applications in YAML, right, or in JSON,
right.
And so basically, what it does is reads. It's kind of like have you seen DCDK? Are you familiar with DCDK?
No.
I'll share the link in a second, but it's basically a project that we did at AWS to allow you to define CDK applications using CloudFormation-like templates.
Oh.
So you can basically use all of the CDK constructs, any CDK construct, and it'll look like a CloudFormation template. So you basically just write like the name of the type, and then properties, and it'll be exactly the CloudFormation syntax. So it's a way to implement SAM using CDK, right? Like you can literally implement like the SAM primitives, and then DCDK would read the file and it produce CloudFormation on the other side, and you can deploy it.
Interesting.
And so we were thinking of doing something like that for Wing too, which would also be cool. The same concept.
I have to throw a caveat in here though, and this is probably going to progress the conversation quite a bit. I feel like I have more or less a sysadmin opinion on the declarative versus imperative thing. So it's like, I know this is the old way of doing it, and I like it because I know it, and I'm not proud to say that in the least bit. And one of the things that I read in Postman's book, where it's talking about an API first world, there's this one full pager that it has on progressions in the API industry. And it was talking about binary code, and then it was talking about how we progressed past binary by creating programming languages. And then we progressed past programming languages by, I don't know, something else. And you just have all these progressions with higher and higher order abstractions until you get to the point where we're at now, where most things are an API. And that's very far abstracted away from ones and zeros, which is what we used to be at. And I know that this declarative approach to really just, I'm not even going to say infrastructure, I'm just going to say building modern applications in the cloud is old. It's like at this bottom of this abstraction tier. And I don't think we're really going to move on really as an industry or a community until we meaningfully get past that and we have enough people that aren't doing it anymore. So with that, let me backtrack a little bit to what you said. I don't know if you should do that in Wing. I don't know if you should try to support that and meet people where they are, or if you should just keep trying to push the mold and say this is the way that we need to do it because it's better, or it's the new abstracted way that does things a little bit differently, that pushes you forward faster.
Yeah, so I feel like it's completely legitimate to have different interfaces, different ways to define something, right? Like I feel like it's completely legitimate that in order to be more that there are different types of like. Anyway, I think it's not mutually exclusive. That's what I'm trying to say. I feel like it's completely legitimate that let's say I'll give you an example for the use case for this, right? We were thinking about what would it take to take any containerized, repository, repository with a Docker file, and deploy it using Wing. Now, technically, the Wing main file in this case would just be something like new container and then a path to your Docker file and the ports that you're exposing and whether it's public access, right? So basically just a bunch of properties. And so in this case, if I had something like this declarative syntax, then I could give you the ability to write wing.json at the top of your repository and say container, and then basically instantiate an object, right? Instantiate an object. And that's all I would need, right? Like I don't need to use all the power of Wing to express my entire cloud application. No, this is a fucking container. Just give me the container. Same for like a static website, right? Like I want to deploy a static website with Wing. It's basically new cloud website with the path to the website.
Yeah, to the client.
And when you deploy it, it deploys in the CDN, and it's working locally. You get like the whole feature, but CDK, wing.json with a simple website configuration. So this is the use case, right? Like it's not about, this is basically about allowing people to use Wing in a different way, or interact with the abstractions in a different interface,
That makes sense. It's a good use case. I like that, because I actually had this conversation with somebody recently where, as much as we'd like to think that everybody is starting new projects from scratch, that is not the case. Everybody's coming to software development with software that they have to maintain. Like I didn't write anything new until I was 8 years into my career in software. It was just maintaining applications for a long time. I was over several of them, but it was not new. And that's the kind of thing that you have to think about a lot, because I think the majority of us pragmatically are there. And if we want to do something new, we're likely bringing our baggage with us too.
Yeah, definitely on our mind.
Yeah, definitely.
So how's Memento going? Like, tell us a little bit about what's exciting there.
Honestly, I'm just super excited about the topics service, which is that notification service. And I'm excited about it because I haven't seen anything else really quite like it. Where for a long time, I would tell people that are into front-end development, have you used Pusher? And a lot of people have. It's a company that does notifications as a service. It's a managed WebSocket service, really.
Yeah.
And it can easily connect browsers together, browser sessions together. And I always thought that was super cool. It's what I always used when I was building out proof of concepts throughout my career, whether it was for work or a side project, to give any sort of interactivity bit. It was, basically an easy WebSocket for me. And so what I like about what Momento's done with their approach, or our approach, is you can connect anything from anywhere to each other. So you can just do browser sessions together without building a backend at all. Can't even tell you how many chat apps I've made in like an hour, or less, where I'm only building one page. I'm only writing one React page, and that's publishing and subscribing to the same topic, aka channel, if you're familiar with the vernacular, and that's it. Yeah. And it's taking the content from the message and shoving it into a list, and that list is what displays on screen as chat. And you can also do that and subscribe to the same topic in a server-side component as well, as long as it's stateful. Say you have a container up in the sky and you wanted to maybe put the conversation in long-term storage, or you could potentially do, one of the cool demos that we have is a live translation and moderation chat, where it actually uses a webhook. So whenever you send a message across with topics, it can publish to a webhook. That webhook triggers a Lambda function. Lambda function runs it through a moderation NPM package, and then passes it to Amazon Translate, and then it pushes the translated message down back a different topic to a client. So you have one Lambda function, and it does all those things, and it's super easy. It's super fast. It's secure. Like it has role-based access control, and you can go
into the push notification, into the notification service.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Nice. This is powerful.
Yeah.
This is powerful.
Nice. Yes. And probably one of my favorite things, I actually just wrote about this, I published a blog post on it last week, is being able to access basically server-side shared resources from anywhere. So, I just made a little game as a showcase. If you guys played a game called Flappy Bird like 10 years ago, super frustrating game. Like for the people that don't know, it only has one button. It's like spacebar, and you control a bird, and you just try to get that bird to navigate through pipes that are scrolling on the screen. If you hit a pipe, you're dead and you lose. So I just made a version of that built on Momento that's multiplayer. So you can see everybody that plays at the same time, and just crash into the pipes, and it's super, super frustrating. But one of the cool things that I did, it's a really fun pattern that I've done just on Momento services, is that player list. So if somebody joins, I want to see that, let's say all three of us are playing. Whenever you join, it hits an API and goes to the server side, creates an auth token scoped pretty narrowly, and sends it back down. But what it also does is it puts your name in the cache, inside of a set in the cache on the server side.
Okay.
Just to say, this is the player list. This is the active player list based on the auth tokens that I've issued.
Yep.
And then when the game starts, from the browser, I can access that same cache item as a read-only with my auth token. Pull that list from the browser. I don't have to create another API endpoint that goes out and gets it, and use that data to basically generate all the players that are going to render on screen. It's super nice to have access to these shared resources on the client and on the server.
Yeah, we need to implement
that. Our brains are.
No, I think it's going to be the easiest. The easiest thing is just create, kind of use their basically not abstract.
Just bring. I think I actually
bring Memento.
I think I actually started working on like a Memento
notification
for Wing.
I have to admit. Sorry to interrupt you.
Go ahead.
I have to admit, I've done a Vite WebSocket React guide in Wing. I did a workshop. It was great doing this. In 1 hour, you have WebSocket set up, an API gateway, some counter, and that's it. But when I've created the broadcaster class in Wing, I gave it an API of a WebSocket. The API was a public WebSocket, and I said, this is awkward. What if this is a broadcaster? Maybe servers would like to register. So it bothered me. That's why I've asked. It bothered me that I'm doing this, and that's why I think we should bring Memento pops up, because for me Memento is also kind of the index, and because I'm exposing a lot of I'm exposed to a lot of AI stuff. For me, it's the index vector. I mean, that's how I think about Memento. I was surprised to see the pops up stuff.
Yeah. So you have used the vector index that Memento has as well?
A little bit, yeah, a little bit in some LLM stuff that I've done.
Nice.
I think the other thought that comes into mind is one of the things that we are exploring is being able to actually interact from the browser with your Wing resources. So basically, think about the browser as like an in-flight.
Yeah, but you have to put
in-flight scope, and then you can do bucket.put, whatever, counter.increment, or get access to database. And so this connection between the browser and the backend, like technically it's possible. Like Wing can totally do this, but the implementation of the communication channel is annoying, is heavy lifting. We need to set up an endpoint and like exactly the things that Memento might be able to solve. And so we can tunnel those requests through Memento all the way to the backend.
gRPC and
basically get like cloud access from your browser to your cloud resources through an authenticated right? Like that sounds like it's exactly what's
super cool.
Yeah, and there are going to be some people that hear that and think that's a terrible idea. Accessing
I know
directly, because in a lot of cases, if you're doing that, especially if it's not read-only operations, you're potentially bypassing business logic by moving things into the client side, or you're having to re-implement client side or re-implement business logic in the client side, which you obviously don't want to do that. So it definitely has use cases, but it is not for everything as well.
Makes sense.
Yeah, you're saying that which I agree, that the separation of the client and the server is useful, right? Like it's an important.
Yes, and that's one of the things that I go back and forth on between. It's like, what do I believe anymore? What do I think? Is that something that should the lines be blurred? Like when React, released server components, and it's hard to tell to the untrained eye, what is running on the server side, what's running on the client side. And, it makes me think, it's like, well, somebody clearly thought this was a good idea. And it's like, why do I not think that's a good idea?
Yeah.
Is that one of the things that I need to let go in order for us to move on, in software?
Totally. But sometimes we have some preconceived and some kind of habits, architectural habits. I'll give you an example like that we are seeing in Wing. Is Wing has this concept of in-flight API for resources or for objects, right? When you define a class in Wing, you can define a bunch of methods that are pre-flight and methods that are in-flight. And the in-flight API is technically the contract to this, to this entity in your application. And this entity can be like a huge thing, right? Like it could include like hundreds of resources or whatever, right? Like it's a bunch of cloud resources that are interacting together. And so, but for all intents and purposes, this is your interface to those resources. And the code that runs inside those in-flight methods can interact with the various resources inside this entity. Now, one of the things that I've been thinking a lot is that today when we're designing cloud systems, the classic boundary between microservices is an API, right? Like as an HTTP API.
Yep.
But technically, if you have an object in your hand and you have a bunch of methods that are in-flight methods, this is your contract. You can interact with that object without having to cross another layer of business logic, right? Like you basically bring the business logic to the consumer.
Yeah.
And I, of course, understand that there are problems with this. I'm not saying
there are tooling problems with this. Do you acknowledge that there are tooling problems with this? If I have a memory leak, I have a memory leak, not the other microservices.
Yeah.
That's and if I have a latency problem, I have a latency, not the other. So there's a tooling problem as well.
No, I mean it's exactly the same topic that we discussed earlier. So, but I'm saying I think like the fact that we can make this decision of like what are we putting here and where is the boundary but the boundary doesn't necessarily have to be like a physical boundary.
Right.
It could be like a logical boundary, and that's, I think, being able to actually control this is adding more options to the minimum. Right? Like maybe it's maybe.
It's real interesting because I've seen some sneaky things done this way. Like almost sounds like another way of what you're saying is basically these resource objects you're talking about are like SDKs. They have all the logic built in, and they handle them not really necessarily in the client side code, but in the object code.
In the color.
Yeah, in the caller, exactly.
Yeah.
And I've seen really tricky things. Like I built a large scale production system that did evidence management one time. And the majority of that is file manipulation and file management. And I was doing an assessment of a file management service that wasn't in AWS. It was a third party. And I was just shocked at what they were able to do and how fast they were able to do whatever operation it was. I don't remember exactly what it was. So I was talking to the engineers and I was like, how are you doing this? Like, this doesn't make sense to me how you would do X, Y, or Z. Let's just say it's some sort of transform on a file. And they're like, well, we do it on the client before we send it to the server. And I'm like, that's tricky. That doesn't work everywhere. For sure, that doesn't work everywhere. But that's a really interesting approach to essentially, borrow some compute of your callers, be it in a browser or something. And I think with the way that hardware is scaling these days, that's becoming more and more of a thing that should be done. Why would I use my server-side compute when your browser is more than capable and I can do that securely?
It's interesting.
I think that we can sum up that the areas when the lines are blurry are interesting. This is where innovation usually comes.
Right.
There's something that we've figured, that the community figured out, but we haven't figured out. We haven't kind of codified it yet. And these are the areas that are interesting. And I want to say this was super interesting talk, and it can go on for hours, but it can go on for hours. We have Mark on the other side, and I want to thank you very much.
Wait, before you say goodbye, would you be interested in like coming over again and we can like hack together this Memento library for Wing?
Oh yeah, 100%. Yes, let's do that.
Let's do that. That's awesome.
Okay, so we'll set that up.
Great.
Awesome.
Great. So, Allen, thank you very much for this conversation this time. This is, I don't know if you're a regular Wingly watcher, but we have a song.
Regular Wingly. We have a song.
We have a song, basically, every time. Usually we have Mark the DJ is choosing the song. This time we're getting an oldie from Amiel. So we're going to hear the Bronski, Small Town Boy by the Bronski Bit. And then we're going to have the Changelog. Allen, thank you very much for showing up. And we'll see you in the session, in the walk, and basically kind of creating that resource session.
All right. Yeah.
That's really awesome.
Thank you, guys. It was a great time.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Hey, how you doing, Mark?
Doing good. I feel like that song was just starting to get going.
We're actually it's not over because I forgot something. So hey, Mark, how you doing, my friend?
Doing good. It's crazy. That's part of the song. That's actually in the original music video. It's crazy. The changelog, the intro. Never mind. Bad joke. I'm doing good. Although I just like this whole time I've been watching, I've been chilling out, hanging out, watching, and the animals, my cat and dog have been sleeping, and now that we're starting, they're both here. They're both like they're ready. They're ready to walk in front and poke me.
Okay.
To attack.
To attack. Yeah.
Awesome. We would like to see that.
Yeah, they'll do it. At least the cat will, for sure. He's right here.
So let's go to the changelog, Mark. What's are you excited today about the changelog?
Yeah, I think it's because there was a gap. There is more. Although something I'm noticing is that I think we're feature wise, like not that many crazy features, which is good. But it's usually my first pass when I look over things. I look at the features first because usually that's like the cool thing. The cool thing is features. But not as many of those, and that's a good thing. It means we're working on stability. But sometimes, then I look at fixes that are fixing gaps, which is not. I guess it's a feature, but it's like, oh, that was supposed to work, basically.
Yeah.
It's a feature.
Which at one point we call them the big holes in the boat.
Yeah, that's the holes in the boat.
No matter where you try to go, you're gonna drown with those big holes. I want to build this. No, you're not.
So there's a couple of those that you could call them features, but they were supposed to. We just kind of thought they might work. They didn't.
Yeah.
But first off, let's start with a couple breaking changes. The breaking changes song.
Exactly.
So first up is some changes from Alad to change the contract of the handler that we have for both Cloud Function and the different API handlers, like the actual in-flight code that runs. Previously, they had the return type was required, and the argument for Cloud Function was also a required string. And this worked functionally, but the ergonomics of it weren't. They kind of got in the way a lot, and it didn't get in the way that it didn't feel useful. It didn't feel like a useful behavior. So you can see here now these examples will work, and you won't get any sort of type error about them not returning anything, and it will be handled fine. It's also worth noting for Cloud API, you can also return only a body or only a status code, and we have some reasonable default values for those to handle them. Alad, you're here, so you can also, whenever someone's here that worked on something, you can say, you want anything to say about it?
Can I say something? Can I say before you say?
Yeah, of course.
I'm particularly intrigued about this one because we have done a bunch of stuff that this is something that I wouldn't do as a designer, as an API designer, and it's always interesting. The places when I wouldn't go that well, and then I see the results. Sometimes I like it more, and I like it less. And but there's and we talked about this. There's specific occasions when I really like it best. I understand. It takes me some time to understand, and I'm wondering about this thing. It's going to be interesting. I don't have an opinion about this yet, and I'm looking forward to having an opinion about this.
Okay.
This is I'm intrigued.
Let me
about
know.
This. Yeah. No, I usually don't. I usually keep this to myself. I'm not complaining about stuff that I don't like.
Yeah, I think for me the guiding principle here is sensible defaults. I'm very into sensible defaults, and so if there's a way for me to have a default for something, optionals are basically the same as defaults. And so if there's any way to actually have a default behavior or value for something that is sensible, that it will work for a good percentage of the use cases, then it's usually where I'm trying to go. And I think the Cloud API example, I think it's pretty.
Yeah, I think it's going to work for you this time. I think I'm going to end up liking this a lot, but I don't know yet. I have to use it. I have to
feel it.
I know because the code, most of the code I've Wing code I've written often, I've used Cloud Function probably more than any other resource. And one thing that always annoyed me was I just want to run some code.
Yep. No, that's an easy one.
So previously, I would have to just return a dummy value here.
Yeah, it's mostly about the API. This one is easy. This one makes a lot of sense.
Okay,
The Cloud API.
The Cloud API one is the one. The fact that we're returning a default status, okay, because I really coded it an if let something and then return 200, and then I didn't do anything there wasn't an else.
Right.
And I said, oh, actually this should be a 500, and I haven't tested this. So I said, this is where I don't like it.
It's because we don't have let else. You want your primary branch to be the success branch.
I mean, there wasn't a lot
to happy flow.
There wasn't a lot. I mean, you could kiss the function was so simple. I didn't care if it's going to be like that or this.
No, of course, I understand. But
I think your point is that it's too easy. It's easy to express the wrong thing. Maybe
I don't know.
It might be the problem.
I don't know. It might be the problem. Exactly. That's what I'm intrigued about.
Especially until we have let else, which will encourage never nesting. Right? It will encourage keeping the happy flow, the main. Right? Like that's a stylistic.
Again, in my case, it just would be more code to keep the happy flow. It's because there was just one function. Anyhow. Awesome. Great.
The other by the way, the other thing I want to figure out for Cloud API is being able to throw status codes, throw errors that will turn into status codes. For example, when you're trying to parse a JSON of a struct, I want parsing error to become 400, right? Like it's supposed to be 400. The default status code should be 400 bad request. And currently, because our errors are strings, which I kind of like, right? Like I feel like that's actually good. That's a pretty good thing. So that's where you
could just do 500. If there is a status code in the exception. I mean,
you mean if the exception starts with a number, then
no, well, it can be a JSON. I mean, if it's a JSON with a status code, okay.
So I mean, our exceptions don't support JSON right now.
Oh, really? Exception? You can.
But they can support JSON.
Yeah, I can do JSON string. They can support everything. I mean,
without any more work, anything we do here would be convention based. So
exactly.
Like, and I think what Glad's saying is something more intrinsic, or even I don't know, something like that.
Yeah. So maybe that's a good. Maybe just
it's easy to make it a convention.
400. And if it starts with a number and column, then it becomes like the status code.
Wow,
that's cool.
Contributions welcome.
Contributions welcome. Okay.
All right, I'll move on to the next one. Another breaking change for us. So new syntax for creating sets, and from when I was reviewing this change, I was like, okay, let me go make sure that we don't have any wing libs. If we need to update any wing libs that are using the old syntax, not a single usage of the set syntax. So it's kind of like, to me, I'm a big fan of this. I like there are a lot of languages nowadays that kind of try to constrain how, like, what does it mean to create a thing? Like, what is the syntax for creating an object, a literal? And I appreciate that, if we maybe, not having it, we don't like, are you creating sets so often that it needs to be its own special thing?
Yeah, exactly.
If we didn't have any problems with the syntax, I maybe it would even be okay to leave in, but it was actually causing problems with ambiguity in the, it's like, it was ambiguity mostly for the parser, but even, I mean, as a user, it's just, when I see an opening brace, I have assumptions coming up. So now this is the new syntax.
Yeah. It's funny because the unique feature of a set is basically making sure that things will not be kind of duplicated, right? And when I'm creating when I'm creating a new thing, I seldomly care about that feature. I mean, I would just create array where I can do more things with array. I can enumerate. I know the order. Sets are a weird thing to start to kind of create, but I understand the need. And I think that was is it the first time we've seen Ignacio? I'm not sure. I've seen him.
We've seen him before, and he actually has a couple others that I don't like to double dip with people too often if I can help it with people. But this isn't his first contribution, although he has some other great ones that were also part of this like changelog, including entries map.end, like getting the entries from a map.
I've used this.
Adding this API.
Yeah,
but he previously made a change. I think I put his name different because his name in GitHub isn't his name. so I didn't. It was like TXX Nano or something.
Oh, yeah. So I know.
So he has a previous contribution as well.
Awesome. Yeah. Makes sense.
No, he's been doing great work. There's even another one that I don't know what it is.
Thank you, Ignacio.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And that's it for breaking changes, but let's go to our guy Chris. So I was trying to think about how to title this one. I went with mutually referential. So having type declarations that can refer to one another, within them, which ends up making it's like the type is recursive, but we actually support that. That's not like we've always supported that. You can like if you imported the JSI library, like we supported this internally, but you didn't have a way of declaring it because our like the language couldn't handle it, like the compiler couldn't handle it. Now it can.
Okay.
Couldn't handle the definition of it, right? Like not it could model it internally, but it couldn't handle like the it was type checking the
the declaration would fail because it did what is it, like a breadth first basically.
Okay.
And it wasn't doing anything special. It was just breadth first, and it would go and it would miss. It would be like, oh, what is like in this line? It would be like, what is this? I don't know what this is because I haven't gotten there yet. Yeah. This extends, I mentioned here, that you can also you can think of it as like hoisting declarations, although I'm not sure. I don't think that's the correct way to say it but you could think of it that way for this example, that it's like kind of bringing everything up immediately and you can see it all.
Interesting.
All the types.
Like forward declarations, basically.
Yeah, and it should say it's explicitly for things that are own like types. So classes are a different case.
Oh, classes are different? I can't reference a class.
Because classes have the weird trait where they're not just types. They have like functionality associated with them. They have static methods are like calling a static method before a class is declared has some issues. I mean, it's a problem in JavaScript, I think, too.
Really?
Actually. It's not like, I think it lets you do it, but it has some weird behaviors, I believe is the thing.
It used to be, I remember this is a problem in Java with static initialization. When was that happen? When you can have dependencies, but I didn't know we have that issue. Interesting.
I mean, Chris, I think he describes it in the PR. But yeah, I mean, for the use cases, this came up because it was actually it was not erroring. So like you would actually do this, and it would be like a weird hidden error. So it was even worse than just not working. It was
interesting,
kind of weird. Like there was something weird going on. So but now it works, and it's a useful way to useful.
Thank Chris. Good job.
Yay, Chris. All right, moving on. So from Mir, I believe that's it, right?
Mayor.
That's okay.
Yeah.
So the bang operator. This is I was struggling to describe it because I worry about using the word unwrap for what our nils are, but however you want to think about it. It's also very similar to the TypeScript's bang operator for like asserting you have a value, and you're like, this value, it could be something or it could be nil, and you're just like, you know what, just forget about it. It's not nil. If you yell loud enough with the exclamation mark, the compiler just forgets that there could be nothing there, and it treats this as if it were.
I don't. That's not what it's doing. It'll fail.
So it'll throw an exception.
It'll throw an exception.
I meant from a type system perspective, right? At a runtime, it will fail.
It'll throw an exception, right? Like it won't treat it as undefined. Like if it's undefined, the error that you'll get is not that you can't find name.
In TypeScript, is this operator just gets erased, or does it? Oh, it just gets erased.
Yeah, it's not doing a runtime check.
Oh, because it wraps around this. It wraps around this to add like.
So I didn't know
the handling.
TypeScript, the bang operator is just erased. Mark, is that the case?
I'm pretty sure. I can't imagine it would do anything.
Yep.
Yeah, because TypeScript doesn't have any runtime presence.
Okay.
Right?
It doesn't have any runtime presence at all. Okay,
Yes.
That makes sense. Awesome. Nice. Interesting.
Okay, yeah. So then I forgot about that. So it will handle. I mean, it's still. It's a runtime failure, but it's not.
It's guaranteed to throw an exception. If you just do log person bang operator, in TypeScript, it will just show undefined.
Exactly.
Well, because it's failing here, I guess is the point. It fails here.
Exactly.
It's not failing because of this.
Exactly.
It's failing because the operator itself is doing something that is failing.
Yep. Awesome.
It's a fair way to put it.
Awesome. Thanks, Mayor. This is good. This is going to make
someone very happy.
A lot of us very happy all the time.
A lot of us very happy all the time.
A lot of us. Because I'm doing a lot of demos, I don't care about what happens if my API I don't care about that. I just put for demos for myself. It's going to be easier.
Hey, well, keep it safe though. That's don't go too crazy because yes, it fails, correctly, but
demos, Mark. I don't need to keep it safe in my demos. I'm living on the edge on the demos.
That's fair. Sorry, got distracted. Anyway, so that's that for thank you, Mayor, for that.
Yeah, great job. Thank you. Okay.
So next up, this is when I was talking beginning about an example of something that is.
Yeah.
This isn't a feature,
no.
But it didn't work before, and that was sad.
Yeah.
This is it.
So I'm thinking now I probably should have shown a more quintessential example, but the core premise is that what you could do before is you could do this. You could make an array of closures, and that's fine. It worked it worked from the compiler's perspective. You could compile it, and then you could call those closures. That worked, but what it didn't do was ensure that the lifting, the mechanism that happens to make sure that the buckets that you reference here and like the operations you reference are able to be accessed by this function. Like if you had written b1.put and b2.put here, it would have been fine, but you didn't write that. You wrote this more reference to this array of closures. So this now works. This is a pretty huge thing in terms of how like APIs can, like how classes can work and APIs can work here. I mean API in the more general sense that like I think a common pattern was like storing like event handlers as like an array. So you store your list of like on whatever is as a list of in-flights. Now you can actually trigger them and get the correct permissions on those triggers when you're triggering the functions.
Interesting.
So
in this case.
Pretty huge improvement.
Subscribing to events.
Yeah, makes sense.
Exactly.
Thanks, Yoav, for doing this. Yeah, and I think that this example specifically is showing a workaround, right? I think it might be worth mentioning the fact that in-flight closures, compilers there are situations that the compiler cannot infer the
if it's known as part of pre-flight. If the compiler can resolve this, during pre-flight, then it doesn't do any static code analysis, but it runs the pre-flight code. That's I think the main difference between whether the compiler is going to know about b.1 in this new cloud function versus not. Is that correct?
No.
Are you saying this is a workaround? I'm not clear.
No, not a workaround, but it's still.
It's basically a special case of the situation where the compiler needs to infer the qualification of the lift, right? So if I have an array of buckets, for example, and I try to do for b in buckets b.put
inside the in-flight function.
Inside an in-flight function, it won't work because the compiler can't infer the lift on the buckets. And in closures, you can basically say there's only one operation you can do in a closure, which is to call it. And so that's how basically you have fixed it. It's basically said if you're passing an array of closures, then I know the lifting qualification because it's going to be calling these closures, right? Like there's only one operation. And so if there's one operation, we just lift this one operation, right? There's no...
Interesting. Wow.
Anyway.
I didn't understand that. Interesting.
To be honest. That's cool. I don't know what you just said.
No, sorry. I said I didn't understand this before, although I'm not sure I completely understand this right now. I'm going to ask more about this. But,
Well, yeah, just, this example works now when it didn't before. That's one thing to say.
Yeah.
And I think there's more. There's like this was kind of a Yoav's been constantly working on improving. He's been doing a lot of great work on improving overall lifting mechanisms and in-flights. So it's if that's something you've like to the viewer, if that's something you've struggled with a long time ago, like have it running into some weird edge cases, worth seeing what's improved in that area. I think.
Yeah.
It's gone over some good work, and we're still working on it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not. I personally am not. I would, but I would love to, and I love seeing what Yoav does. As well.
Yeah. The lifting mechanism is the mechanism where we take an instance from pre-flight and use it in an in-flight method. Kind of use the client, and in fact, in a way, in Wing, the novelty is the in-flight, kind of the two phases of execution, and the lifting mechanism is taking stuff from one phase of execution and passing it to the other one. The API changes, but there's something remains, and it's complex.
Whenever I talk here, I assume anyone listening is like they're already in the know.
In the know.
Because like we have a few viewers, and I'm assuming they're the same viewers every time.
No,
you guys have heard us say in-flight, right?
We have a few viewers here, but there's 40
I know.
50 people watching this after. I'm not sure
whether
they know or not. I don't know.
That's true.
And lifting mechanism is something that I think it's worth mentioning over and over and re-explaining it a lot.
Maybe we should do like a little video that explains lifting, and you can like pull it up every time
I mean, it's true. We say in-flight a lot more. Lifting is a terminology has grown in usage over time, and like bringing it to the user's face more, like saying lifting. I think we're going to keep saying it a lot. So yeah, we can maybe get that video prepared. Just play it like the changelog intro every few minutes. All right. Let's go on to the next one. So from a first-time contributor, Christopher, added a new function to our file system, our FS module, to append file. So we had write file and various other ones, but now if you want to write to a file but not like you want to add on to the end of it, you can do that.
Yeah.
Just a lovely missing API that got added. Very much appreciated.
Yeah. Awesome. Great work. Thank you, Christopher. This is good. This is good stuff.
Next up from Hassan, I feel like I won't do this one justice in terms of how much like stuff it can this kind of lets us do, but I'll try a little bit. So platform parameters. We got our platform master Hassan to implementing this, our master of platforms, and it's basically a way to provide settings, configuration data from outside either the CLI or a config file that's been added, wing.toml, and have it provide values at the platform here being either like TF AWS or AWS CDK or a custom platform. The ability it can read these values and then change its behavior based on that, and it's going to be like a strong contract, saying like what's the type of the value, what's the is it required or not, default values, all that type of stuff. It's a strong contract, and you can do things like in this example, kind of our signature example for this is the dealing with like VPCs, and I didn't put the subnet IDs, but like you can basically configure things about your networking now with TF AWS target. I don't know if it's only that target. I think it is, but anyway, you can configure things about that, and it's able to understand and be like, okay, well, you want a new VPC and you want to make sure your lambdas are always created in a VPC. That's kind of but we have a default behavior for that. But if you want to set up that, set that behavior to be something else, you can change this config file and add to it, and boom, there you go.
Mark, is it a dot or a dash in the?
Oof, it's a dash. My bad.
It's a dash. Okay. Okay. Thank God, man. Okay, so Hassan, our master of platform. Did I do platform? Okay, forms.
Yeah, I wrote it with the dash here and then not here. Yes, it is.
Okay.
Although interesting thought. about this. Terraform is technically kind of the real platform when you think about it.
I understand the idea, but
not intentional.
I'm not using a dash somewhere else. I'm using a dash somewhere else, so it has to be.
No. It's like the name of the platform. Like we have a concept called platform name. That's the name of that platform.
So forgive my typo there, but yeah.
But thank you. This is awesome.
Yeah.
And
the way I see it is basically it's like input parameters that go to the platform, right? Like basically it's the API of the platform provider, and it's like the sky's the limit to what this can do, right? Like eventually it could be anything, and it's like platform specific. So this is like AWS. It's about VPCs and Lambdas, and GCP or Azure or whatever platform.
Interesting.
Could have completely different APIs. They don't have to be compatible.
Yeah,
right? That's not
that could be
that's below the abstraction.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways to solve this problem, but this would be a good place for putting the web. If you want a specific port for your web page to run locally, simulator and then local port. That could be if you want to be. I mean, if you have other children, that's a good place. That's awesome.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Strongly enforced with JSON schemas.
Awesome. Great.
Do you know why he was using JSON schemas?
Because it structs?
Yes.
Okay, makes sense.
Yes.
Awesome.
The idea is that you'd be able to basically write platforms in Wing, and then your platform API is just going to be the props.
Yep.
Struct props.
Makes a lot of sense.
And it'll automatically.
Makes a lot of sense. Awesome.
Give me ProGen vibes.
Exactly.
As well, with how the ProGen project properties work.
Exactly.
We did it better.
Awesome.
Okay. So thank you for that. And last up.
Oh, you changed it. Nice, man. Oh.
So I fixed the thing. So okay, I was like, how do we even talk? So the whole console team been working a lot on both I call them console team, but they work on also Wing Cloud as the service. But I was looking through the commits and I was like, there's like a billion commits from Christian with going through like some of the design changes here with the console. So I didn't put a name. I mean the whole team has been working on it, but I think I frequently in the last couple of weeks I would wake up and see like 4 changes. All console changes, iterating on some design stuff here. So I think that, if you've used the console, also the playground, which has the console in it, or it is the console. No, it has the console in it. That's a better way to say it. If you use it before, you probably notice several of the differences. I probably will forget some, but the dotted background is one. The design of the nodes themselves has changed, different shadows and what gets highlighted and what gets faded. Like it's pretty over the last since the last changelog there's been so many changes that it looks completely different almost. I also didn't show up, but there's the dragging is now like you hold space and then you click and drag, which I like. I'm into that. And I'm even just today I missed it because I started this before and also I'll show the next one. But Bring UI.
Wow! I saw it was pushed.
I didn't include it because it was like, save it for next time. Save the tasty treat for that.
Very tasty.
Just so the design here, but yeah, Bring UI. I haven't tried it, but I saw the PR merge to get Bring UI working.
Yeah, I've seen it also. But these changes of Christian, this is just
it's beautiful.
It's beautiful. I like it in light mode as well. This is just awesome.
I agree.
Yeah.
A side-by-side would have been a good idea.
Yeah.
By the way, I did not do that.
Always a good idea.
Yeah.
It's always a good idea. Yeah. It's oops. That's my typo for this page. Is not doing that. Just know it's real tasty now. Looking real good. And that's all.
That's all.
The change.
Wow. Yep. So side by side views request by Nathan and by Hassan. I mean,
all right, listen. I get it. I didn't do the side by side. I get it.
We were hearing a lot of voices.
Killing me.
Great.
This is fun.
This was fun. There's a lot of changes,
and there's lots of changes that are not here, right? Like I feel like
I mean there were 103 103 commits.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna do 103 commits on this show, so I did like 7 or something. I don't know how many it was, but so many great changes.
Awesome. Well, guys, it's been a pretty long show. I kind of feel like I feel like I should have been more time accurate, but I had fun. That's what happened, and it was super interesting for me.
Have we ever finished the show early? That happened?
Not early, but not 20 minutes. 20 minutes long is different.
That's a long time.
Not early. And thank you, Mark, for this dedicated work and great presentation of what has changed. And,
great presentation.
Great presentation of what has changed. This is that was
no
my
side by side.
That was
no
my
side by side though.
Side by side. Maybe.
And the dot. And the dot.
Yeah,
oh my god.
I
gotta get out of here.
And I want to thank you, Elad and Ellen, and for the viewers.
See you in 2
I'll
weeks.
see you in 2 weeks. Let's say goodbye with Small Town Boy.